unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. It seems, at least to Boxing Ego, that there's some more bad news for Terence Bud Crawford. Make sure you turn your volume up, listen to what I have to say, subscribe, all that good stuff. Then you can leave me a comment. I will explain in this video in detail why I'm saying bad news for Terence Bud Crawford. So, Vergil Ortiz, he just fought Sergey Bohachuk. And I got to give you guys the backstory in case you guys missed some of the other content that I put out. This is for new viewers as well. So Vergil Ortiz won. In my opinion, it was a fight that he lost. It was a fight where there's a lot of people saying he was exposed, and I can understand these sentiments of Vergil Ortiz being exposed. Not being exposed like just any old person can beat him. I don't mean that. But what I'm saying exposed is he had a 100% knockout ratio. That quickly came to an end. The first time, like, I told you guys, and I can prove it, it's on my social media, that Bohachuk was going to be a very, very difficult fight, and he could play spoiler. And in my opinion, he did play spoiler. So I feel vindicated, and I feel I was correct. Just goes to show you that I know my stuff. So Bohachuk is a big 154-pounder. He lost to Brandon Adams early in his career, and he learned from it, you know, just like Canelo losing to Floyd, things like that, to the point where he got better, you know. And there's other guys in boxing like Bacoli. He's another person. Martin Bacoli lost to Michael Hunter, but the way he looked versus Jared Big Baby Anderson, he's going to be hard to beat because he learned from that, stuck with it, and he looked very good versus Jared Big Baby Anderson, right, who showed a lot of promise. So Vergil Ortiz, in a sense, he was exposed because Vergil Ortiz, at one point, Oscar De La Hoya said, and it created friction with Ryan Garcia, but he says Vergil Ortiz is the best prospect that I have. And I remember Ryan Garcia was like, release me from my contract if you feel that, because he too is with Golden Boy. This is after Canelo left, of course. So Ryan is like, hold on, what about me? You know, kind of thing. And Ryan Garcia did beat Vergil in the amateurs, but that's that. So Vergil Ortiz, he was in a tough fight. I knew it was going to be a good fight, and it was that. And I told you it would be a banger and not to sleep. Oh, I found the tweet just so you guys can see, because people will be like, oh, you never said that, right? So look, August 10th, clearly the day before the date that they fought. I think Sergey Bohachuk versus Vergil Ortiz will be a banger, and Bohachuk is a real live dog, right? He got more fights at 154 pounds with better competition. His back looks huge too, meaning like he's just like filled out. And he learned from the Brandon Adams loss, which I kind of went over again in this video. Should be good stuff, but don't sleep on SB, aka Sergey Bohachuk. And again, I truly think that Bohachuk won the fight. And I know I'm not the only person. Dame Lillard, NBA player, he said it. And, you know, I don't got to do a bunch of name dropping because I don't care everybody who said it. I know what I'm saying. I know what I watched. I know what I'm seeing. So let's run this. Let's keep this story going. We unpacked. So the bottom line is Vergil Ortiz got a win. People are saying it's a robbery. People said Bohachuk really should have won. The only problem is Turki, who is the Saudi advisor who's putting on Riyadh season card, working with the UFC, working with some boxers, just put on Crawford, Madrimov card, etc. he is a person who has promised to provide Terence Crawford, who he says is a legend, and I'm not going to go over everything he said because I've already done it in past videos. But just to paraphrase a little bit, he says, I wish I got involved in Terence Crawford's career earlier because, I could have helped him. I don't like statements like that because unless you have a time machine, it's neither here nor there. There's no use crying over spilled milk. Terence Crawford had the career he had. He's 36, about to be 37. He stayed so many years with Top Rank. They did what they could do for him. He then went on and did the BOK Prime fight with David Avocado. Then he beat Errol Spence. And then he had the Madrimov with Riyadh season. That's what happened. It is what it is. There's no use crying over spilled milk about what could have been. So anyway, Turki says he wants to provide the biggest fights for Terence Crawford. Now, before Vergil Ortiz and Sergey Bohachuk fought in the ring, Turki was interviewed and he says, listen, Tim Tszyu, he out of here. I'm not worried about working with Tim Tszyu anymore. And he says the fight that I plan on making or want to make is, I like what Golden Boy's doing. I want Golden Boy fighter Vergil Ortiz versus Terence Crawford, and then have Shakur Stevenson versus another Golden Boy fighter, William Zepeda, on the same card. This is what Turki said. But I don't know if we're going to call it the Turki curse. Vergil Ortiz didn't win that fight. So for me, the desire to see Terence Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz, for me, it's extremely low because I truly believe Terence Crawford would definitely beat Vergil Ortiz from what I've seen. Like, he was loading up with every shot. He was trying to throw everything like a fastball. He was trying to throw everything hard and menacing. And he was getting hit with right hands all night by Bohachuk. The other thing was Bohachuk was pretty basic, straight up and down. He just is strong. He has a good frame. He would tuck himself and be pretty tight defensively. But the thing that I noticed was Bohachuk was extremely slow, but he had enough strong attributes. Plus, he was durable, and he was a warrior, and it gave all the problems in the world. He even dropped Vergil Ortiz 2 times in the fight. So why would I want to see? I understand Turki made the comment before the fight, but after seeing Vergil Ortiz finally fight somebody that we know of, it was kind of like Crawford fighting Madrimov. That was kind of one of the first recent people that Crawford fought with no handicaps, no long layoffs. Madrimov had just fought in March. Somebody that was younger than him, somebody that had a good style to rival his, no handicaps. They haven't been shot in the leg like Jose Benavidez, hadn't been ejected through a car wreck like Errol Spence, plus a long layoff, detached retinas and whatnot. Kell Brook with bad eyes from the Triple G fight and the Errol Spence fight. Sean Porter on a 450-day layoff when he fought Crawford. So Madrimov was the first guy where I think he's 29 years old. He's an able-bodied person. He's capable. He's big. He's strong. He was undefeated. He had just fought in March and became a champion. And it showed to be just that when Crawford fought him, and that was a tough fight. But the thing is, Crawford, I thought the Madrimov fight it just wasn't a good look because not enough people knew who Madrimov was. So the perception of you struggling or you having a tough fight and, getting hit with some shots from a guy with 11 fights, and you got 40 fights and you're the name in the A side, I just knew optically that wasn't going to be the greatest. And you even had people who said it was a draw, Madrimov should have won. Canelo said that, right, etc. However, being totally fair, like I always am on my channel, Terence Crawford, it wasn't like he was doing a bunch of stuff wrong. It was like a high level, high speed chess match. Neither guy was fully committal, but they weren't making like egregious mistakes. It was just like kind of a cat and mouse game, especially in the early rounds. And, you know, Madrimov was doing good, solid work and trying to catch Crawford. He was mixing it up with the feints. And then Crawford was doing very sharp work. So it was just that type of fight. But this fight with Vergil Ortiz, again, Bohachuk, he did his thing. I think he won. But he looked very workmanlike. He didn't give Vergil Ortiz his styles make fights. And the way Bohachuk fights is not how Madrimov fights. He just had kind of one mode, and that alone gave Vergil Ortiz all the problems in the world. So again, for me, I know Crawford got criticism for the Madrimov fight, but his criticism is nowhere near Vergil Ortiz's criticism, because Vergil Ortiz, there was many moments in the Bohachuk fight, to me, where Vergil Ortiz was looking sloppy. He was looking wild. He was looking mad desperate. He was looking predictable because he was just throwing everything hard and loading up. Even his corner said that, Robert Garcia. So I know what I'm talking about, especially if former 2X champion Robert Garcia and his trainer is saying the same thing. And I think Bohachuk won. So I told you guys to follow along, because some people are like, how is any of this bad news for Terence Crawford? And I'm glad you asked. So in this video, I've given you the chronological order of things that have transpired. Terence Crawford became a free agent, left Top Rank, did a one-off with BLK Prime, bragged about BLK Prime and how they let the fighters be at the meetings and yada, yada, yada. And then he didn't even stick with them. So it was just kind of a waste of time. Easy check. You know, no one thought Avanesian was going to beat him. He stretches him. His gloves exploded, picks up a check, you know, we don't really learn anything new. And he just got got to knock the ring rust off. But that fight really did nothing. You know, it didn't make me learn anything about Terence Crawford that we didn't already know. We knew he could sell a crowd in Nebraska, where he's from, things like that. So I didn't really learn anything new. Then he teamed up with Al Heyman, did a one-off with them and a partnership with Al Heyman for that Errol Spence fight. Errol Spence, I've already went over it. He gave up far too much to make that happen. Coin flips and gave additional monies. I would have told Crawford to kick rocks, because Errol did the heavy lifting, picked up the belts, built the brand, put more butts in the seats in different venues and stuff like that. It is what it is. Nonetheless, Errol didn't do that. Like I said earlier in this video, we're not going to cry over spilled milk. So Errol Spence, just lesson learned. Don't, as the A side, give up all that leverage. But when Crawford beat Errol Spence, he was having parades back at home. He was on like the Breakfast Club again, and he was doing these podcasts and stuff. And it looked like he was trying to improve with his public relations and being in the spotlight. And he got kind of more of it beating Errol Spence Jr. But here's the thing. Terence Crawford, after that wore off in about a month or whatever, I feel like Crawford reverted back to who he is and just went back into his shell. And then we didn't really hear much about him until he came back out and they announced this fight with Madrimov. So all that momentum, that positive traction that he had gained with Errol Spence, all that favor, because everybody respects the performance. He walked out with Eminem. It was such a period of time. Only fight, like, I feel like after he beat Errol Spence, he should have did a David Avocado style tune-up at the end of that year, just to keep his name out there, keep his name fresh. But whatever, like he could have did his own card. He's a free agent. Do your own card in Omaha. Put you and Steve Nelson and a couple of homies on it. You know what I mean? Just to stay active and stay in there. But Crawford, he didn't do that. You know, he just whatever, spend time with the family, holidays with the family, vacation, whatever. Then he didn't reemerge until this Riyadh season card, and then we find out that he's not working with PBC. Fast forward to today, that's why I'm saying it's bad news. So Crawford didn't choose to extenuate the situation and work with PBC. And then he had the card with Madrimov. I felt it was a letdown. The Riyadh season was a letdown. It was too bloated. It was too long. It was like 11 hours. The best fight was a late replacement fight to Vergil Ortiz, who was supposed to be on the card, but his fight with Tim Tszyu got kicked off because Tszyu wasn't cleared medically or something. And then the best fight was Jared Anderson versus Bacoli, which was a late add and, a late addition to the card. The Crawford fight, I expected more. It was just kind of like a cat and mouse game. Crawford, he picked up the pace a bit in the later rounds. Andy Ruiz versus Gerald Big Baby Miller, definitely expected more. Plus, Miller got robbed. I watched the fight. He got robbed. David Morrell expected more from his performance. Pitbull looked horrible. So basically, everybody with a name, I don't think their stock rose from being on Crawford Madrimov. The underdogs and the unknowns, they had their way. Jared Anderson was the name that people were familiar with, and he got knocked out. So Bacoli, now he in Congo doing parades. So that was a boost for Bacoli. Jared Anderson got knocked out. Bacoli gets the boost. Hot Rod, he lost, but maybe people respect him a little bit more because he didn't just get knocked out and go away. So David Morrell's star power didn't exponentially grow being in a new division. Same thing with Pitbull Cruz. He was kind of the A side in the Rayo fight. Rayo's stock grew and he became a champion. Pitbull lost and that took a back seat. Same thing with Crawford. I think he had a good workman-like fight, but given everything that I've said in this video, people just expected more because it's Crawford and they didn't know this 11 fight guy. So again, some of you are still scratching your head like, yo, ego, get to the point. How is any of this bad news for Terence Crawford? Here's why. Who is Terence Crawford going to fight next? Again, I've already went over it. Turki is saying he wants Vergil Ortiz. I don't want to see that. You guys let me know if you give Vergil Ortiz a real chance to beat Crawford at 154. Again, as soon as he stepped up and fought someone that I respect, like Bohachuk, who beat Brian Mendoza and things like that, and was an able, capable person, all that 100% knockout ratio just went out the window. You didn't even drop Bohachuk. I'm telling you, that is not, styles make fights. That is not a good fight. From what I've seen, Crawford is not a good option for Vergil Ortiz. So to me, I think that's going to be harder to sell that fight as opposed to if Vergil Ortiz got a knockout like he's been doing and looked like he's been looking. The fact that you had this unknown Bohachuk, I knew him, but a lot of fans didn't know him. And then people are saying it's a robbery and stuff. So that kind of messes up Turki's plans. Then after the event, there's more footage that leaked on YouTube. And it was a question to Turki about working with Tim Tszyu. And they're like, oh, hey, are you interested in working with Tim Tszyu or something? And Turki responded that basically Tim Tszyu, that's off. Like, that's a dub. Turki's basically saying that Tim Tszyu, me working with him, he don't get it. He don't know what he's talking about. I actually have the quote for you. He says, and I quote, "I will not work with Tim Tszyu. Let him in his way. He doesn't understand." And I think that might be a little bit of the language barrier. The question was, who would you like Tim Tszyu to fight next? Turki responded, "I will not work with Tim Tszyu. Let him in his way. He doesn't understand." So let's just break this down, boxing ego style, shall we? What I believe Turki is saying is, I will not work with Tim Tszyu. That's pretty easy. That's plain English. But I think he's saying he's getting in his way, or something's getting in the way. His wires are crossed. So let him figure out his own career, because I'm over it. I'm not working with him, right? keep in mind, Turki had done another interview, I believe, for Crawford Madrimov, and he was just talking about, well, it was actually days after Crawford Madrimov, he tweeted and he said he's going to get the biggest fights for Terence Crawford. He wants to work with Benavidez and this guy and this guy and that guy, blah, blah, blah. But one thing he said in that tweet was, he said Tim Tszyu, maybe. He said something to the effect, and it always sounded kind of weird. He said something like, Tim Tszyu, I reached out and his team, you know, I don't know what's going on with his team, so that's a maybe. But then now, fast forward to the Vergil Ortiz and Bohachuk fight, he's saying flat out, I'm not working with Tim Tszyu, which finally leads, I told you we would get here, to the full bad news for Terence Crawford. Peep this. Terence Crawford is at the end of his career. He's going to be 37 next month. He just had a performance where I guess you could say not everyone was so impressed. I think that's fair to say. Thought he had a tougher fight than they thought he would. So it wasn't like the Errol Spence where you had the bigger name and then you thrashed him and dropped him 3 times, got the stoppage, yelling at Charlo in the crowd. It wasn't that type of affair. So the Madrimov fight was pretty tough. Vergil Ortiz, the guy who Turki is saying he wants Crawford to fight, he's in the same boat. People are saying he lost to Bohachuk. And then in that tweet from Turki, he already ruled out working with Canelo Alvarez. He says, Canelo Alvarez, I'm over it. I'm done. I'm moving on. Peace. Then he took further shots at Canelo, saying Canelo, he just wants easy fights and he don't want to fight nobody. Knowing what I know about Canelo, and I've been covering Canelo for over a decade at this point on the channel, Canelo has an ego, and that relationship looks fractured. Canelo, I doubt he would want to work things out with Turki because at this point, they've both kind of taken shots at each other in their waging war, which leads me to my point. Canelo Alvarez, one of the faces of boxing, Canelo and Gervonta Davis, Canelo Alvarez and Turki currently beefing. Now you have, after Ortiz Bohachuk, Turki says, I will not work with Tim Tszyu, who comes from a fight family. His dad was a fighter. He has Australia behind him. He has a name and a following. He's a great fighter, former champion. He's saying, I don't want to work with him either. So here's my issue. Turki said he's not working with Tim Tszyu. Turki says he's no longer working with Canelo Alvarez. Both of these guys work with Al Heyman and PBC, right? Mind you, out of the Riyadh season Crawford Madrimov card, PBC was the only promoter, because they had different promoters on the card. It was the only promoter that was smart enough to have their big fight, Pitbull Cruz, Jose El Rayo Valenzuela, with 2 PBC fighters, meaning an in-house fight. It was just on somebody else's card, and they had distribution rights so you could buy the fight from them on Amazon Prime. That was very smart, because whether Pitbull won or El Rayo won, the winner still goes back to PBC, versus Bacoli versus Jared Big Baby Anderson. You have a fighter that's with the UK and Boxer, and then you have a fighter that's with Bob Arum in Top Rank, and then the Top Rank fighter gets destroyed and knocked out and is no longer undefeated. So now Top Rank, they got a fighter that they got to try to rebuild that we just seen, and he took a beating. His head was like rocking back, and it was, you know, he took some malicious shots. So PBC was smart to basically make an in-house fight on that card instead of, let's say, Pitbull versus Liam Paro or something. And then what if Pitbull lost to Liam Paro, an Eddie Hearn fighter? Now Eddie can run off like, oh, we beat Pitbull. We just beat Montana Love and Subriel Matias. Now we beat Pitbull. So it was very smart on PBC. So I'm noticing somewhat of a pattern. Canelo, Tim Tszyu, Turki, he's saying he's not working with two big names with PBC. So herein lies the problem. Crawford, end of his career. He's saying he only wants the big fights. He being him and his team, they have turned down the idea of Jaron Boots Ennis. Hear me out. Which I have so many problems with. But they've basically said it's a lose-lose situation. Let him be on his way, yada, yada, yada. But Turki is saying Vergil Ortiz, he wants to make him with Crawford. So what has Vergil Ortiz done so much over Jaron Boots Ennis when we know two black fighters with slick boxing, punching, boxer-puncher styles is like Ken and Ryu? People would want to see that. Plus, Boots has not ever looked like Vergil Ortiz looked with Bohachuk. Nobody made him look like that to this point, even though he hasn't moved to 54 yet. Right? So I'm starting to have so many questions. Why is Turki want to make Vergil Ortiz but not the Boots fight? And you've worked with Eddie Hearn. Boots is with Eddie Hearn now in Rematch Room and DAZN. Crawford just fought on DAZN. Why can't we get that fight? You want to sell us on this fight with Crawford and Vergil Ortiz. Now, we'll put Boots to the side because that's the fight I want to see. Now you look at we're just talking about big names. You're looking at the other big names in terms of Tim Tszyu and Canelo, and Turki is actively pretty much waging a war with both of these fighters publicly and saying all bets are off. He's not working with either guy. So remember when BOXINGEGO said bad business Bud? I said, Bud, great, terrific fighter, doesn't always make the best decisions. And I called him bad business Bud. Now you see it. Here's the issue. Instead of sticking with PBC, which would open the door for maybe a future Errol Spence rematch at 54, Jermell Charlo, a fight with Fundora, a fight with Tim Tszyu, right? A fight with Erickson Lubin, right? All of these great, maybe even Canelo, because Canelo is even working with Al Heyman and PBC, right? So those fights would be easier to secure under one umbrella. Crawford doesn't like to listen and he's stubborn, so he didn't want to do that. So he ran somewhere where they need a star, so they're willing to overpay for a star, even at the cost of having a show that's upside down, which they said Crawford Madrimov was. They said it lost over $10 million. I know for a fact they were giving away tickets. Eminem, his booking fee is ridiculous. So you wasted money. They're saying it did 100 pay-per-views. So Crawford would rather like bankrupt BLK Prime, waste the money of some of these other companies, and then what are they going to give you? Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz? I'm telling you, I don't want to see it. I don't know many people that are going to Crawford off of the Madrimov win and Vergil Ortiz off of the Bohachuk win. I don't know many people that are going to want to spend $80 for that undercard or for that particular fight on a pay-per-view. But again, the problem lies, and this is why I said bad business Bud. If you would have stuck with PBC, the two guys you see on the screen, Tim Tszyu, Canelo Alvarez, those fights might be on the table for you. They have majority of the people in like big fights that you want to see. Because you said you're not going to fight Boots, or it doesn't make sense. It's a lose-lose situation, even though you're all with the same side for the most part, on the same platform. And then now your advisor, your Saudi advisor, Turki, has, he feels slighted by Canelo not taking a meeting. He feels slighted by dealing with Tim Tszyu's team or whatever. So now he's like, nah, I ain't working with neither one of them. So tell me how this is good for Terence Bud Crawford, where he's about to be 37. Turki's saying he's going to give him the big fights, but then he's outcasting credible, reasonable names that would otherwise be big fights for Crawford, like Canelo and Tszyu. Keep in mind, Crawford at a point in time, he's called out both Tszyu and also Canelo Alvarez, saying he wanted those fights. So to knock them off the table because everything can't be your way, or because this is what I believe. I believe that PBC, they run a tight ship. It's a well-oiled machine, and they're not just giving away all their chess pieces to some guy who's trying to bankroll and, get whatever going. And I think sometimes when you have money, like Turkey has money, you're used to being able to, you're used to people like kind of like butt kissing and at your beck and call. When I say jump, you say how high type of thing. And I think that's what's creating the friction. Canelo's not moving on Turkey's watch. Canelo, like, I'm fighting Berlanga in September. I'm not meeting with him in Los Angeles. Who knows? He probably want to spend time with his kids or go to Disneyland after the Berlanga press conference, Knott's Berry Farm or something. He want to go to Universal City Walk or something. He's not trying to meet up and discuss a future fight for 2025. So he's like, yeah, I'm not taking that meeting. And Canelo's earned it. He's a boss too. He make money too. So if he already got his stuff situated and he don't want to take the meeting, he don't have to take it. Same thing with Tszyu. And I think Turkey is perhaps, he feels a type of way because he can't get probably the PBC fighters to, like the bigger names, he can't get them to move how he wants them to move. Same thing with Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis said, give me 2 Ferraris just to talk to me. The other thing is, I don't think it's smart in the world of boxing to, you know how they say never. So I don't think it's smart to alienate anybody, and it's so funny to me, all the anti-PBC crowd, old media, the usual suspects, they said Turkey is saving boxing. Turkey is giving us the fights that we want. But Turkey is not even giving Crawford the fights that he said he wants because he's creating tension, friction, enemies, whatever you want to call it, with the people you see on the screen, Canelo and Tszyu. And he's just totally saying, this is not going to work. I'm not willing to work with them based on whatever, ego, pride, stubbornness. It's my money. I could do whatever I want type of thing. I don't know. I don't know what happened with the Tszyu especially. I don't know what transpired that left him at that. But now he's publicly ruling out these fights. But he promised on social media and in interviews and stuff that working with Crawford, he was going to provide Crawford with the type of attention and money and access to the biggest. He said, I'll give him the biggest fights that he wants. But that's cap because he wants Tszyu. He said he wanted to fight Tszyu. He wants to definitely fight Canelo, even if you don't remember him saying the Tszyu part, which I do. He definitely said he wants to fight against Nello. And instead of saying, okay, Canelo don't want to meet with me this week, maybe we can do a Zoom call after his fight or whatever. It sounds like Turkey's just more or less just like, nah, F him. We don't need him. So I think that's a conundrum, if you will. That's why I'm saying bad news for Bud. I think that's a difficult position because imagine you're paying, like, let's say you're an actor, right? And you're paying an agent to help you book big roles. Like they're doing the new Pirates of the Caribbean and you want to be in the movie and you're an actor and you feel like you could do this role. But if your agent is in Hollywood, your manager, your talent agent, whatever, and they're creating enemies and or they're hot-headed or they changing their mind and they're like, man, I hate this director. And they have these like personal, that's why in business you can't make everything so personal. It's business. It's always business. It's never nothing personal. But again, imagine being that actor who you're paying somebody to look out for your best interest and book you roles or casting calls, and they're kind of doing the opposite because they don't like the producer. So then they're going on social media saying, oh, this producer sucks and da-da-da-da, I will not work with this producer. You got to look at your actor. You got to look at your talent. Terence Crawford is the one that's been fighting his entire life. Terence Crawford is at the second chapter, the closing chapter of his career, I would imagine. So I don't see these personal like beefs and like disagreements and wires crossed or whatever we're calling it with Tim Tszyu and Canelo being beneficial to Crawford. You're supposed to be you're saying you're going to give Crawford the biggest fight. Crawford fighting Vergil Ortiz is not the biggest fight. Crawford fighting Canelo. Listen, I've stated my opinion. I don't want to see it because I don't like the weight class jumping. However, I know for a fact Canelo has a fan base. People like watching Crawford. It would be bigger than Vergil Ortiz. I mean, there's no one that I think would argue that a Canelo Crawford fight, just because it's abnormal or it's unique or it's this weight class hopping, you know, it would attract more attention than Crawford versus Vergil Ortiz, right? Even to Tim Tszyu. You're saying I don't want to work with Tim Tszyu. He's from Australia. They got money in Australia. So they got big venues. You've seen Devin Haney and George Kambosos, and they packed out like a soccer stadium or something, 40, 50,000 people. So imagine Crawford and Tim Tszyu. But you're just ruling these options out, which I don't think is smart to rule anything out. And again, the fans were just praising Turki, saying he's bringing everyone together. But now we're seeing true colors come out a bit. They said that Turki was saving boxing and he was uniting all the promoters to work with each other. But that's not the case. It simply is not the case, because you're no closer to the big fight for Crawford and getting him Canelo or Tim Tszyu because you're saying, I don't want to work with them. They made me mad, or whatever your reason is for that. And again, he's in charge of the money, so he can do whatever he wants with his money if he's in charge of it. But you still got to look at your talent. You said you were going to give Crawford the big fight, and you're pushing away big fight for whatever reason, because maybe you want everything to be your way, or you want them to come to the meeting when you say and stuff. And that's the thing. That's the reality. I truly believe. I think guys like Golden Boy, their roster is small. Golden Boy, they don't get the same love Eddie Hearn gets on DAZN. So they might be willing to take anything. You know what I mean? But when you're a successful business, you don't have to. You can do what makes the most sense for you. Right? Like, let's say Netflix versus, let's say, Tubi or something. If Netflix make more money than Tubi might have any type of movies on there because they just need content. So they have some low budget things, But if you're Netflix and you got more money, then you could choose to be like Canelo and be pickier about your lineup. Like, nah, we don't really want that. Like, if, let's say there's a movie, an old movie, and it costs X amount of dollars, and this movie came out in the 80s, and you don't think that many people probably want to watch it, and to secure the rights of it on Netflix is X amount of dollars, and you're not willing to pay, you'd be like, I don't want to do it. I don't want that. You know, and this is life. This goes with anything. If you're a ladies' man and women like you, right, then you can afford to turn women down. But if you're a nerd and you don't have much success with women, then you can't really do that. So if a girl like you at work, then, you know, it's probably in your best interest to go on a date. She wants to go on a date with you, go on a date with her. But then if you got several women and a bunch of attention with women, then it's another day. It's nothing new. So I just feel like Turki, they said it was Crawford was, you know, the mastermind, and people always want to act like it's always greener on the other side, like the grass is always greener, but it's not, because as I see it, if he would have stuck with Al Heyman and PBC, I mean, they might pay you a bit more reasonably to what you can earn, but you would get the better fights, and then you could work to maybe a bigger fight like a Canelo or whatever, instead of the promotion losing money, everybody involved, you know, is not happy, and then you're being overpaid. So I don't know. I can't wait to see what Crawford's next fight is, because to me, I think this is counterproductive. You're saying you want to give Crawford big fights, but then you don't want to work with two big fights that I've been talking about, Tszyu and Canelo. And you're outright saying, I don't want to work with these guys. And then as far as with Canelo, you're taking shots at Canelo, which, knowing what I said earlier, knowing what I know about Canelo, I think he's going to take that a certain way and be like, all right, I got you. I ain't never working with you now. So I don't see the reason to rule out anything. And then again, like I said, Crawford's he's a great fighter, but he's not a big money-making blockbuster fighter. So that's another reason why it becomes a bit weird to me for you to push away fights and say, oh, I'm not working with this guy and I'm not working with this guy. So I think it hurts I think it's hurting Crawford. The wishy-washy, and this guy's not communicating with me fast enough, for whatever reason he's saying that he don't want to work with Canelo and Tszyu. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. We unpacked.